So hi everyone, I'm Caroline, and today I'm presenting briefly on Odissi dance, which is a classical dance form of India. So to start off, Odissi originated in the eastern province of India called Odisha about 2000 years ago. As with most art forms of that time, it originated in the ancient temples as part of ceremonial worship. And it was done in reverence for the gods for various aspects of ritual worship, such as even waking up the gods in the morning, entertaining the gods perhaps in the afternoon, and even aspects such as putting the god to sleep in the evening. And it has been influenced over the centuries by various religious and ideological movements in the region. For example, Hinduism, Jainism, Shakta goddess worship, Buddhism, Vaishnavism, which is the worship of Krishna and Vishnu, Shaivism, which is the worship of Shiva, as well as aspects of Tantra. All the religious influences that have happened close to Hinduism, Odissi has been influenced by. And Odissi, like all the other dance forms in India at that time, derive their principles of dance from Natya Shastra, which is a very ancient text, over 2000 years old. If people have heard of Bharatanatyam and other classical dances of India that are more popular, all these dances derive their origins from Natya Shastra in basic principles on what dance should be, what music should be, and what drama should be. So Odissi has been carried through the centuries for over 2000, almost 2,500 years through various lineages. The Maharis were temple dancers who were dedicated to the temple, and it was their duty to perform all these various rituals and dance ceremonies for the gods of the temple. And they are the original dancers of Odissi. Following eventually, because of the popularity of the dance, there's another lineage called Natyaki, which is court dancers that were brought into the courts for entertainment for the rulers and kings of the periods. And eventually there emerged another tradition called the Gotipur Tradition in the 15th century, which was essentially young boys dressed as women who performed this dance. And the Gotipur Natyaki tradition were important, especially the Gotipur, in the sense that they brought the dance out to the people, to rural areas, various communities that are not immediately tied to prestigious temples. And if people know the caste system of India, the castes that were not allowed to enter the temple never saw the Maharis dance. So the Gotipuas essentially played a part in bringing the dance to the common people throughout the centuries, or since the 15th century. However, since colonization and British rule in India, all the classical dances were seen as vulgar, provocative, sexual, and pagan, and were ostracized, and there were laws passed by the British rulers banning the practice of Odissi and all the classical dances. Typically, as with most parts of colonization, North India suffers a bit more, kind of like if people imagine Canada, like the East suffers more, like the Beothuk almost went extinct, while at the West, because they're on the tail end of it, they get little of it, if people know that. But anyhow, Southern India, like the Southern dances, despite a lot of their decline, they survived. But Odissi also experienced severe decline. And you could almost say that the dance was extinct, as in like by the end of, by 1947, when India got its independence, nobody was practicing it. All the Maharis suffered huge social disenfranchisement where they were ostracized from society at that point. So following independence, a committee called the Giantika Committee was established, where gurus and experts on this dance form were brought together to essentially reconstruct the dance in its modern form as it is today. Unfortunately, because even at that time, the Maharis were highly disenfranchised, they were not included in this conversation. And here I have four names of four gurus that were highly influential of the Giantika Committee. And modern Odissi dancers will retrace their lineage to one of these gurus. Most of these gurus are Gotipur dancers, so they were initially young boy dancers in the villages. Except Pankaj Charan Das, I believe he is the son of a Mahari. But however, it's to say that modern Odissi now has high influences of Gotipur tradition, and not as much, but some influences of Mahari as well. So to get into the dance, these are the two basic classic positions that are distinct to Odissi. There's the choke, which is a square position. It's considered the masculine, predictable, and symmetrical position of Odissi. And Tribhangi being the three bent position. So the dancer depicts three bends in the body. And it's considered the feminine, unpredictable, and asymmetrical position of Odissi dance. And also the Odissi costume is very much influenced by the region and as well as the classical periods. So you see the dancer always wears white flowers, tahia from the region, silver filigree jewelry, as well as silk and cotton clothing that is native to Odia or Odisha. And to give you a brief idea of what the Odissi repertoire consists of, it usually has 5 pieces, but there can be other pieces intertwined as well. But the typical 5 pieces that you will see in an Odissi repertoire includes the Mangala Charm, which is the dance that is the beginning piece of a repertoire. It basically involves asking for an invocation and blessing and for an auspicious beginning for the dance. And if people know Hinduism, usually almost anything that begins, even like let's say a construction project or going to school or anything, all beginnings, the invocation is done to Lord Ganesha, who is the elephant god. But in Odissi, usually it's to God Ganesha, but it can also be done to Shiva, Shakti, Vishnu, and other gods as well. Following the invocation piece asking for an auspicious start, you have Batu, which is a dance basically exhibiting the rhythm and aesthetic of the dance. It is pure style piece. And following Batu, you will have a Pallavi, which Pallavi literally means to blossom. So you will have a piece that is rhythm and style, but it will also invoke a lot of emotions. For example, the first Pallavi that most dancers learn is the Basant Pallavi, Basant meaning the spring Pallavi. So it is a dance that depicts a lot of the emotions of love and newness and beginnings of spring. And Pallavis usually start with a slow rhythm and tempo and end with a very fast beat. Following, you will have an Abhinaya piece, which is essentially dance drama. So you are depicting a situation, a story in history. You're using poetry, literature to depict that situation. The most popular dance drama in Odissi is something called Gita Govinda, which is written by Jayadeva, who is a famous saint poet of the 13th century, I believe. And it's poems depicting the love between Krishna and Radha, Krishna being an incarnation of Vishnu. So their separation, their togetherness, and all the drama that happens between them is often depicted, but Abhinaya now has always included other poets of Odisha, but now also modern Odissi influences Abhinaya by modern issues and concepts as well. And finally, the Odissi repertoire will end with a moksha piece, which is a piece again on style and aesthetic, but it is style and aesthetic attributed towards enlightenment and depicting a liberation of the soul. And I mean, that's about as best as I can depict moksha. You'll have to see it to know what it is. Yeah, so basically that is my presentation. There's Odissi schools, thanks to a lot of expats. There's a lot of Odissi schools in Ottawa and Toronto and some um, other parts of Canada and throughout the world at this point. And during this pandemic, there's been a lot of online shows, mostly free, but we try to make a donation to the artists. But lots of creative content that you can view online. But of course, as with any performance arts, the personal, like going and seeing it personally, is literally 80 times better. But right now, we have a lot of stuff online. So I would encourage people to go check it out anytime. Thank you, and that's me.
Thank you.